welcome and thank you for joining with us with this week's midweek devotional. Sorry, no activities for this week, but we do want to bring a devotional this week, and we're going to take a look at what God spoke through the Apostle Paul on information on how we can navigate having conversations with people, because we have conversations in so many different walks in life, right? We have them in our marriages. We have conversations in our dating relationships. We have conversations when it comes to work environments. We have conversations with our friends. Basically, if you talk to anybody who's of humanity. So we find Paul passing on this knowledge to Timothy when it talks about his Christian walk. And we're not going to spend too much time with this idea, but I think it does set the stage for when it comes to our conversations. Quarreling is going to be the main issue that Paul is going to be bringing up here. And he starts off by giving 3 examples to Timothy to help him understand what it is that God is requiring of us. And so he uses examples from everyday life, which is very helpful for you and I, right? To connect God's truth to our lives and how it plays out. And in 2 Timothy chapter 2, we're going to be just kind of skimming through the high points of that chapter. And it's in verse 4 that he brings up the first example. He says, "No soldier gets entangled in civilian pursuits, since his aim is to please the one who enlisted him." And it's a reminder that the soldier is to stay focused on the task at hand. If he's worried about things that are on the home front and what he's doing at home, his mind isn't where it needs to be, right? He's not going to be focused on the task. He's not going to be protecting his brothers and sisters next to him in the battle because he's thinking about what's going on at home. He needs to be focused in the task that lies at hand. And that's important for us to know as Christians as we walk this earth, that we need to stay focused with the task that God has given us, right? To raise our families in the right manner, to spread the praise and glory of who God is, to have kingdom living into our lives, to go out and evangelize and make disciples. Those are the things that we're called to do. And if we get caught up in other things that the world is saying around us, then we're going to be not so heavenly good because our mind's in the wrong spot. And so in verse 16, Paul warns through God's revelation to Paul. We don't want to get this confused. This isn't Paul's words. This is Paul speaking through the inspiration of God. So this is a declaration from God himself. Right? Verse 16, "But avoid irrelevant babble, for it will lead people into more and more ungodliness." All right, we'll talk about irrelevant babble here in a second, but let's make the connection, the big picture first. Let's look at the forest. God's saying, if you have irrelevant babble, the ultimate destination for that is ungodliness, right? Something that is against God. We are called to have godliness into our lives. So if we do this that we're being warned against, we're going to cause ungodliness. We don't want to be a part of that, right? And he gives the warning about that. And their talk will spread like gangrene. All right? So it's not just that when we use irrelevant babble that we affect those that we have spoken to. The problem is it's contagious and it keeps spreading from there, right? And going on. And they repeat what they've heard and they spread it to other people who then spread it to other people, and it starts spreading out and it's wrong. So what is this irrelevant babble that we want to be so cautious of ourselves and keep from doing? Is it meaningful of what we have to say? And I think this is the one that's important for us to really grasp. We've talked about this before, but it is so important. We'll repeat it because we need to have it ingrained into our lives. Again, it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to apply it to our lives. But I've used this quote from Peter Baron Starks before, where he says, "When you open your mouth, does it get you one step closer to your goal?" That's, as Christians, what God is saying with saying, avoid irrelevant babble. Nothing should be coming out of a Christian's mouth that is not beneficial for edification, for growing somebody, for correcting them, right, in the right things to do. So we got to ask ourselves, is this important, what we're talking about? Or in the scheme of things, if what we're talking about does or doesn't happen, does it affect anything in the kingdom of God, in the protection of the family and spreading the praise of glory of God, those key components that I need to do? Or are we just having other human beings be wastebaskets for our words, right? We're just unloading onto them. So we gotta check that out, and that's a hard thing to be looking at. Of does what I'm saying, do I really want this to transpire? That helps us, I think, understand why, in a practical sense, obviously in a theological sense, we don't belittle people because we're called as Christians not to belittle people. But if you need to see it in practicality, is that really your goal? In a conversation, if you belittle a certain group of people or a person that disagrees with you, so as an example, use it in a marital relationship, you are upset at your spouse for something, usually not the actual issue at hand, but something you're building on that you've been frustrated before in the past, and it's slowly building up on just these little tiny things, so you go off on them on the little tiny thing. So say you say, "You are so stupid," all right? You throw out that harsh word there. Was that your goal? Was that really your goal that was coming out of your mouth, that you want them to walk away from this, that they are stupid? I bet not. You might be feeling that way. You might be like, yeah, I want them to realize they're stupid, that's why I spit it out. But does that really get you any closer to your goal? Does that fix the problem that's been arising? No, it doesn't. It just is a speaking out of frustration, and it's a belittling of another human being. That's irrelevant babble, right? And it's going to lead to more ungodliness, because what is their response going to be back, right? Are they going to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I hurt you, I should be more compassionate"? Maybe with the Lord working to them, but more than likely, they're going to lash back out at you, and they're going to use belittling language to you, and we're going to sink more and more into ungodliness. So we want to avoid this irrelevant babble. And I think Peter Starks has that good way for us to look at it. Does the words coming out of my mouth, does it get me one step closer to my goal? And if not, these words shouldn't be coming out of my mouth. Because what if they do exactly what you say? Wait a minute. They could come back and say, "But I did what you said." And you say, "Well, actually, what I communicated to you was not the point of what I was trying to get across to you," right? So we want to be communicating information that is a part of our goal. So it's a good, I think, standard to be thinking about on how to live a godly life in terms that maybe aren't necessarily straight out of the Bible, but they stem from the Bible. So Paul goes into more detail, though, of kind of what this irrelevant babble is. This is kind of the overarching heading, right? So these things that aren't getting us one step closer to our goal, the things that aren't founded in Christ. But now Paul kind of breaks them down into three other categories of this is kind of what irrelevant babble can look like to help us kind of formulate into our minds things to avoid in these discussions. And again, remember, this is any kind of discussion that we're having with somebody that's going to lead possibly to a disagreement or an argument. He says in verse 23 of the same book and chapter, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 23, "Have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies. You know that they breed quarrels." All right, so we all are engaged in conversations. But God warns us there are certain irrelevant babbles that we can use that are going to cause quarrels. All right, and quarrels are not beneficial, and we'll look more at that for a second. So we have these three categories: foolishness, ignorant, and controversies. All right, foolish is where we just speak our opinion. All right, that's what the Bible is getting at when it talks about foolishness. In logic, they would call this arbitrary. We have no reason for what we're saying. We just feel that way. All right. Now, this is hard because this isn't about what is right or what is wrong, and this isn't about convincing other people that you're right. This is about how we communicate. All right. It doesn't matter whether the position you hold is right or not. The point is God is saying, do not use foolish talk, where you are just speaking out of mere opinion. All right. Let me give you an example of something that has a lot of truth into it, but the logic doesn't add up, right? The question, and some of you have probably heard this little illustration before, but the question is posed, why are fire engines red? And the answer goes, because fire engines have 8 wheels and 4 people on them. And 4 plus 8 makes 12. There are 12 inches in a foot. And 1 foot is a ruler. And Queen Elizabeth was a ruler. And Queen Elizabeth was also a ship. And a ship sails the seas. And there were fish in the seas. And fish have fins. And fins fought the Russians. And the Russians are red. And fire trucks are always rushing around. So that's why fire trucks are red. Right? There's a lot of truth in that, but that's not why fire engines are red, right? So just because somebody's right doesn't mean what they're stating is a good thing to do. Now, that's obviously a little bit far-fetched, but we could say, I hold to the opinion 2 plus 2 is 4. Yeah, I'm right. But if I tell you the reason I say that is because, well, that's what I want it to be. I want 2 plus 2 to be 4. I think it makes a beautiful looking equation onto it. So I also declare 3 plus 3 is 5. Well, that's not true, but I'm using my same reasoning there. My opinion is 3 plus 3 is 5, right? That's relative. That's what we get thrown around of what's truth for me might not be truth for you, but it's truth, and that's not a biblical stance, and we should reject that. But that's what opinion is based on, is relativism. Of it's true because that's my opinion, right? And that doesn't hold up logically, and it doesn't hold up biblically. We're supposed to avoid the ignorant talk as well. Ignorance is when we haven't done the research to know the other opinion. Again, in logic, they would call this the idea of like just a little bit of research would show that you're wrong, right? We've probably all seen it on social media, right? People repost things, and it doesn't take very long to look up the fact checking of what they put and go, it doesn't even hold up at all, right? That's an ignorant statement. And as Christians, we're told to refrain from that. All right, make sure you know the facts of what you're talking about and you know the positions on both sides. The best way to look at this, I think, is do you understand the need behind the other side? Once you figure out the need behind the other side, you've probably done your research. We can get hung up a lot of times with that surface level area of the facts and things that people are throwing around. And that's important to know as well. But you can understand that you truly understand both positions when you understand the need. So again, this is in a disagreement, or let's use the illustration of a disagreement in a marital relationship or a dating relationship. All right. You're upset because of one thing, they're upset of another thing, and you have this clash between the two of you. And you can talk about the surface issues all you want to, but that's probably not going to lead to much of a resolution, or it's going to take a long time there. What you want to understand is, what is it that the other person is needing? Because sometimes the solution comes out in ways that neither side was even thinking about. And the need goes deeper sometimes than what we think. A lot of times what's communicated is what we want. It's not necessarily what we need. All right, and so let me just help us navigate maybe this a little bit more. Say in the argument, one of the individuals is saying, you're not around enough. Their need is not for you to be around more. All right, that's not what they're asking, because that won't make it better. You could be sitting on the couch watching TV 24/7 by them. That's not going to meet their need, right? That's not what they meant by I want you around more. So that's not the need behind what was being communicated. So what is it that they're needing from the other one that's asking them, or that's causing them to say you're not around enough, right? Well, this could be multifaceted. We need way more information to be able to determine it, but maybe they need a sense to feel like they're valuable to the other person. They're feeling that the other person isn't around that much because they don't love them. and they don't value them, and they don't have a friendship with them. And so what the spouse or the other person on the dating relationship is trying to communicate is, I need something back from you to let me know that you value me and that you want to be around me. That's the need that they're asking for. And I'm not saying that understanding the need means that you have to succumb to the need in every single situation. But when you understand the need, then you're probably not very ignorant anymore, right? You understand the chain of reasoning of why they're saying what they're saying and what they're feeling with that. And this is across the board, any kind of discussion we have. We don't want to go into it ignorant. So we need to know, why are they saying what they're saying, right? We've used the illustration of knowing that filtration system they're using to process the facts, the information, the observations, to know the conclusions that they're coming through. And understanding that underlying need really helps us navigate that as well. And when we have that, when we can step away and go, I get their need now. Maybe it's not a legitimate need. Maybe it's not a need I can meet. But I hear their need coming out now. Well, now I'm not ignorant anymore of their information. So now I'm making a wise decision with the information I have at hand, because I know both sides of the issue. So we don't want to be foolish, right? Just mere opinion, having no reason for what we're saying other than I want to do it. We don't want to be ignorant and just making decisions off of what we already pre-believe and all the research that goes with that, but we need to know why other people believe what they believe and what that underlying need is that they have. And the last one is controversies. Controversy is something that you go into with no desire for resolution. All right? I'm going into this discussion, argument, with the purpose that you are to sit, listen to everything I have to say, at the end, agree with everything I have to say, and tell me I'm sorry. Tell me that you are sorry for everything. That's a controversy, right? I'm not coming in to hear your side. I'm not coming in to find a resolution. I'm coming in to tell you how wrong you are and how right I am. And as Christians, we are called not to go into those types of communications. Those three categories are irrelevant babble. They have no use into doing them. You could not have those conversations. Boy, I think that's a double negative. I think I said that wrong. But you could go through life not having irrelevant babble into your world, and it wouldn't change anything except for you would have less frustration. Right? So we don't want to go with just our mere opinions. We don't want to go with not knowing the other side. And we don't want to go into an argument or disagreement with just trying to prove our point. If we do that, all it's going to do is lead to more quarrels. We just fight and we get more upset at one another. It's going to spread like gangrene, right? Our mere opinions, our unchecked facts and positions that we have, and attacks against other positions without understanding the other position and the need behind it. Others that are like-minded like us are going to spread that information to everybody else. Again, great example. We can see it all over, on social media on so many different issues. And we see the controversies, right? Where people are just trying to tell everybody how wrong they are and how right they are. That's not what we're called to do as Christians. Now, doing right and finding solutions do have some of that stuff as a part of it, right? We do have to advocate for our position, but it comes with gentleness and respect, and it doesn't slander other people's characters or positions that they hold. Because when you slander somebody, you've just shut the door for a resolution. But when you say, boy, I don't know if I quite understand what you're saying because here's where my mind's going and here's how I'm seeing this, right? That's helping them see your point of view, and so then they can work off of it. And there is going to be this back and forth and disagreement, right? Having a good discussion doesn't mean that everybody just agrees with what everybody has to say. Make sure you're going in trying to seek a resolution to what's going on. So that way we can all avoid irrelevant babble that's going to spread like gangrene and has no purpose. And when we sit down and we look at what is the meaning, what has God called you individually and me individually to in this world, does the words that come out of my mouth get me one step closer to my goal? Or am I arguing or even doing the right way of trying to come to resolutions on things that actually have no purpose, right? Am I trying to teach you that this tree back here fell down and it really made no noise because nobody was here? And somebody else is saying, no, it still made noise even though nobody was around, right? It's to a point where I think that's kind of irrelevant to the mission that God has given me, right? Whether that tree made noise when it fell in the woods, when it died or not, whether somebody was here. Sometimes just check the things that you are passionate about and speaking about and going, is this really what God has called me to do? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Thanks for spending this time with us this week. Pray that you have a blessed rest of the week and can't wait to connect with you again.